let's talk about these events that have been cancelled. And I'm going to talk about how some are certainly more significant than others. This one is a biggie for reasons that might not be apparent. And I will use a little bit of insider knowledge here to kind of make it explicit as to why it's an issue. Starladder have cancelled their Star Series Season 19. Now, Starladder, it's a mixed bag, right? Because Starladder, they had that event in Berlin, that major in Berlin, which was like 2018. And we remember the memes. It was called the Start Later major. There was tons of delays, tons of tech problems. So they had the Start Later memes. We did a no majors club for that one because that was one of the events I didn't work. Also, I published stories about how Starladder, they were delayed, they weren't paying talent the fees, and there was a long waiting list that was going on. Obviously, as well, there was all the stuff they did with the DMCA. There's a reason now that Valve pretend when you are a major broadcaster, they now pretend you own the intellectual property of Counter-Strike, which you absolutely don't. And so if you want to broadcast from the game client even on your own stream, even though Valve themselves put that in the game, and I am in no way restreaming or touching their broadcast whatsoever, Valve say the people running the major at the same time can DMCA you. They've given them permission to do that, which, as I've said multiple times, there's no way that would legally hold up. That's simply not how that, Digital Millennium Copyright Act works. It's not how it works. But anyway, Starladder were the first organization that did that to people en masse. I said to them, I ran the No Majors Club, and I said, fucking DMCA me, I fucking dare you, because I will get a lawyer, and we will shred this bullshit once and for all, because you do not own the right to Counter-Strike. And lo and behold, because it was me, and back in 2018, I think people were a little bit more scared of my journalism and what have you. They messaged me privately and said, well, we're not going to DMCA you. And I'm like, well, why are you DMCAing anyone? And anyway, We've moved on since then, and we've got these agreements in place that seem to be a happy mid-ground, although it should just be, if it's in the in-game client, you can broadcast it on your stream, and that's fine. But whatever. So there was all of that. And then obviously Starladder is based in Kiev. They're a Ukrainian tournament operation company. So as you can imagine, recent events with the invasion of their country has caused problems with doing the business and getting talent out there, and they ultimately went into silent running and shuttered some of their operations temporarily while that situation went on. Anyway, they came back. When we started CS2, Valve were essentially saying to everyone, you can come out and pitch to us, and we're looking to have more choice, more diversity in the majors, and we'd love it for everyone to give us a pitch. And to my surprise, Starladder were one of the groups of people that actually pitched and said, we're coming back in a big way in 2025, and we'd love to do another major. And Valve have worked with them before. Representatives from Starladder were out there in Copenhagen for the meeting, and it became apparent that, yes, Starladder were going to get a major. And we were like, okay, well, where's the major going to be? Because Ukraine, Kiev, it's definitely not a place that's appropriate right now with what's going on. And so they were, it became clear that they were going to be doing an event in Budapest, in Hungary. And so, okay, that's fantastic. I love Budapest. I think it's one of Europe's greatest cities. I've been there multiple times down the years. I was there not that long ago, drinking in one of the many ruined bars and having a good time. And I love it. I love it out there. In fact, one of the saddest things that ever happened to me involves Budapest. I'll just tell the story now. Fuck it. You like it when I ramble. I had a group of friends who were traveling, and I had an esports event, and I couldn't go to Budapest. I had to come back and let them continue traveling, and I had to come and do esports, right? And, you know, when you're having a good time, you're in the thick of it, you're traveling. I was thinking the whole time, I might just not go. I'm drinking. And then I was like, nah, fuck it, boys. I gotta go. Esports is my calling, like a siren song that brings you to fucking the rocks, you know. And then, so I went to this event, and they went to Budapest. And at that time, Budapest had, it was the Hercules movie with The Rock that was being filmed there. Let me find you the movie. So this is 2014, this was. It was this movie, right? Dwayne Johnson is Hercules. And anyway, they filmed parts of this in Budapest, right? On location. And my friends went to Budapest, and this was being filmed, and they went into a random club late at night, and you'll never guess who was there. It wasn't The Rock. It wasn't John Cena. But if John Cena was there, my friends couldn't see him. It was the legend, Peter Mullen. Peter Mullen, the great Scottish actor, because he was in Hercules. And some of the crew were out drinking with Peter Mullen, and Peter Mullen notoriously is a super down-to-earth guy. And anyway, my friends went there, and one of my mates was from Castlemilk, which is a notorious estate in Scotland. And he used to run Cadred with me back in the day. And anyway, he went up to Peter Mullen, recognised him immediately, and said to him, like, oh, you know, good to see you, huge fan of your work, you know. And he says, oh, yeah, I hear you're Scottish, where you from? He said, oh, Castlemilk in Glasgow. And he says, oh, fucking hell, you're from a shithole as well, ain't he? And he says, yeah, absolutely. And he said, do you want to sit down and have a drink? And Peter Mullen was talking to my mates in Budapest all night. He hung out with them all night. Wasn't that they were leveraging his time. They were all super sensitive about it. He just met another Scotsman abroad and wanted to fucking sit and talk with them all. And he hung out with them all night, buying the drinks and just being an all-round fucking legend. And that experience could have been mine. I could have had that experience, but instead, probably at this time in 2014, I was working a Gfinity or an ESL, being told by the Counter-Strike community to kill myself because I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to a video game. Could have been me with Peter Mullen. But anyway, just another reason to love Budapest. Even missing out on Peter Mullen never put me off the fantastic city. So anyway, Budapest, just a great city. And why is it important? Well, Starladder Season 19 was likely to be in Budapest as well. We never got to a point where it was announced where it was going to be, but the reason it was happening in the first place, what we were told behind the scenes, was they were going to do it in Budapest because they wanted to do a test run for the major. They wanted to run one event in the same space, so when the major happened, there was less likely to be any fuck-ups or missteps, mishaps, whatever you want to call them. And so they've now had to cancel this event because of the way the major timeline has altered. And you can see, I'll just read you the HLTV report. Starladder have announced the invite and qualifier details for Star Series Season 20, as well as the cancellation of Star Series Season 19 due to the extended timeline for the Austin Major. The tournament organizer was expected to host 4 events across 2025 and 2026, but now will only hold one event in 2025, namely Star Series Season 20. The 16-team event will be held in Budapest, Hungary from September 13th to 21, with Starladder now announcing the dates for the regional qualifiers, and you can see there's the regional qualifiers and how they're going to pan out. Starladder also stated that the invitations for all qualifiers will be distributed based on the VRS ranking, and that all matches will be played in a best-of-3 format. The invite date for the event and its qualifiers have been chosen as July 4th. So, ultimately, they ended up saying we have to cancel the event in the first half of the year due to the extended timeline for the major in June. We also found out that rescheduling the tournament is impossible because there are no free weekends left in the first half of the year. That's how crowded the calendar ended up being. So this is a bit of a bummer because, look, for all of Starladder's history that I set you up by talking about and all the shitty things that they've been involved in, ultimately I'm glad they're back because it's a very different time. And in the same way that, like, for instance, PGL and I did that hard reset after 21 because all of a sudden we were just faced with total Saudi ownership of the esports space, or total government ownership of the esports space, if you include the Danish government and Blast. It's like the more tournament operators that come back and offer people alternatives, it's better for players, it's better for fans, it's better for broadcast talent, better for players. So, we just have to do a hard reset on a lot of the shitty activity they've done, give everyone the benefit of the doubt, shake hands on it, and hope that Starladder are able to put on a good show, befitting a major in a great city. It's a shame. I would have really liked to have seen what they were going to do in their first event back and see what they're going to do differently. People do forget that Starladder were, in terms of the broadcast, they did have some innovative touches at their show. It wasn't just, slop that was being served up. They did do some really good stuff, and they had some very talented people working at that company and working in production. So I would have liked to see how they would have evolved, but unfortunately, no. We're not going to get to see that until it may be too late. We will wait and see. It wasn't just them, though, unfortunately. There was another event that was cancelled, and it was the YaLLa Compass. Now, look, I'm less sad about that. Avert your eyes, Peter Mullen. I was less sad about this one. But in the last time I talked about the calendar and how things were changing in the world of Counter-Strike, I was saying we're probably going to see some changes around this. Now, YaLLa Compass is another one of these Emirati projects that ultimately is being run by government oil money, and YaLLa Compass have come in and they have these big, expensive prize pools, but very often they haven't had a lot of teams there. Now with the VRS being in place, they're kind of obliged to invite the teams that are just there on the VRS ranking. But that's something they hadn't done, and Valve put out a warning and said, look, we're going to have to change all of this. You've got to comply with these rules or you can't have the event and it can't be official. And so that's what they've done for the 2025. They've made the adjustments that ultimately means they're not an officially sanctioned VRS event. And so here again from the HLTV report. The organisers of YaLLa Compass have released an update to their 2025-2026 circuit, making several adjustments in order to ensure the compliance with Valve's tournament operating requirements in force from this year. This comes after Valve removed the rank status of YaLLa Compass Winter Contenders earlier in the month. It had been discovered that YaLLa defined the three-stage invite-only tournament as an open qualifier, but ignored several eligible teams in their invitation process, claiming to use specific filtering criteria, which is against the rules for Tier 1 events. And this was, again, you can go and watch the VOD on Twitch, or it'll be on YouTube probably by the time you're seeing this. One of these criteria were, we suspect, some of these teams, some of these players may have engaged in nefarious activity behind the scenes. Valve are saying, if we don't believe that, if we don't know that, if we don't say that, then ultimately we aren't going to do it. So I don't know how I feel about that one, because on the one hand, I know enough about trying to prove match fixing to know it's nigh on impossible. All you can do is look at patterns of behavior and outcomes, and you can take from them likelihood. It's like, look, if everything has to be beyond a reasonable doubt, even when it comes to who you invite to your tournaments, that evidentiary standard feels unbelievably high for something as intricate and private as match fixing. Balance of probability, however, which is what you would see in like a civil court, that seems to be on the balance of probability these people are doing these things. And that's fine. And if on the balance of probability they are doing these things, I don't want to invite them to my tournaments where they can continue to possibly do these things. Now, it would suck for the players if they're innocent, but also it sucks for every single player, every single fan, everyone at the tournament if they're not, if they're guilty. So you kind of have to balance up the lesser of the two harms. That's how I view it. But maybe I'm wrong on that one. We'll see. Valve obviously very broadly are in the corner of players and absolute 100% irrefutable evidence, as we saw with iBuyPower and the lengths that we had to go to just to get them banned. And then when they banned them, they issued a penalty so fucking insanely draconian, everyone was kind of feeling bad about the whole thing. Hopefully they've learned. So anyway, that YaLLa Compass now have had to make these changes to their schedule, and it's gone. The ongoing Winter Series will go ahead as an unranked event, while YaLLa's future events in 2025 have been redefined and their invite process has changed so so that they follow the new rules. The previously unannounced Compass LAN events in Doha, Qatar, in April, and Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, in November 19th, will serve as Tier 1 standalone tournaments with a closed qualifier leading up to each. The main change here is the invite process to the two events' closed qualifiers. Qatar's qualifier will have 12 teams instead of 16 and no longer feature teams coming from the now unranked winter event, and it will become invite only by Valve's regional standings. Dubai's qualifier will feature 16 teams instead of 12, mostly coming from VRS instead of 6 from the previous YaLLa tournaments. And so that is ultimately in line with all of the rules from the VRS. So their first one, that's going to be a standalone tournament, it's probably going to have some pretty stinky teams there that no one really wants to watch. Because ultimately there's no value to going to it, because the tournament will not improve your standing in VRS. Valve will not be recognizing it because it doesn't conform to their standards. They are going to make it go ahead as planned. We've seen other tournaments that has happened to, where they've just cancelled it because they don't see any benefit to running an event without good teams being there, and therefore by extension good viewership being accrued. And yes, look, you can still see the prize money, the one in Qatar, $600,000 plus $75,000 for the closed qualifier. This is the contenders event. These are their little smaller events. And then for the big YaLLa Compass event in Dubai, it's $675,000 again for their main event. And invitations will be going out 60 days in advance, another standard from Valve. So, I mean, look, I'm not shedding any tears over that event being bumped down to not being officially in the VRS. It's, again, not a tournament I would ever have any interest in working with or supporting. It's just another oil-producing nation's government coming in to wash their reputations and get a piece of this esports pie. I don't really care about this one at all, but you're going to see some of your favourite teams and some of your favourite players. They're going to be going there and competing in that event. Then we also had, let me get this, the Sky Esports got cancelled as well. The Sky Esports souvenir. We covered this on the previous video. And this was $250,000 LAN that was meant to take place early in 2025. It never got to the stage of announcing which venue it was going to be in. And obviously, we're in fucking the end of January now. This was announced a week ago. And so ultimately, teams were saying to them, we need to know what you're planning to do, because we don't want to come all the way to India to compete in an unranked event that wouldn't earn us any VRS points. And look, the problem Sky Esports have got in general is Sky Esports have run a tournament that would have very nearly won the worst tournament of the year in the Gonzo Awards. It had a ton of problems. Players complaining about it, like ridiculous setups, PCs being taken to the practice rooms, and it didn't even have CS installed, but it did have other fucking random games being installed in it. Rickety, cheap wooden tables and all of these problems. And look, they fixed a lot of these issues on the fly. You can't really help a fucking monsoon causing a power cut, although maybe don't host an event when there's a monsoon season, lurking around the corner. And it's tough because, look, I root for the Indian community. The Indian community has been plagued by all of their esports personalities, in the sense that every Indian project has been run by some sort of grifter. I've got coverage. I mean, this is how I think how I met Blair was I did a story about it's a YouTube video, and it's called The Worst Contract in Esports. And it was this Indian tournament operator slash organization owner slash, jack of all trades. And they put out a ridiculous fucking contract that ultimately was very prohibitive for player rights, player money, made all these outrageous demands of players and everything else. And I think Blair hit me up and went, wow, you don't know the half of it about in our scene. And we've been friends ever since. And now we've got the great pleasure of working together at multiple majors and working together at PGL events, where he's basically my go-to drinking buddy. So, because he's an animal like me. So, anyway, you had that. You had multiple tournaments in 1.6 and Source where people were like, no, this is a totally real tournament, yeah, with a $1 million prize fund. Really, really come to this event. We had the Indian Gaming Carnival, if everyone remembers the IGC, which was an event where when people got there, the event didn't even look like it was going to happen. Same thing, rickety old wooden tables in a warehouse, didn't look safe or fit to put any equipment there. Some players got robbed. Some players said they got held up at gunpoint, although I've always found that story a little bit dubious. It's just, you know. And then, obviously, Optic India. Hey, let's build a super team on one of the biggest esports orgs. Oh, this player is better than Simple and Ziwu whilst playing on a laptop. Nothing to see here. I'm sure we've just unearthed the greatest talent CS has ever seen. No, don't ask any questions. So the Indian fans have been treated ridiculously poorly at every single turn. And so you wanted Sky Esports to win, but unfortunately they had to put their best foot forward. And live, you know, doing these live events, it's hard, it's tough. And so their reputations took a hit. And then here we are now, where people were willing to give them another chance, and now, due to some scheduling conflicts, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what happens to Sky Esports moving forward reputationally, because it's going to take a big leap of faith to want to go to their next events. This was their statement, just for, you know, completion in this video. Sky Esports' statement said that due to concerns raised by teams about the tournament potentially being unranked, they were left with no choice but to cancel. We had applied for an exception to reschedule the Sky Sports Souvenir 2025 and introduce wildcard invites. However, despite our efforts, we have not received a response from Valve. Coupled with the current situation surrounding other events and concerns raised by teams about the tournament potentially being unranked, we are left with no choice but to cancel the Sky Sports Souvenir 2025. We sincerely apologise to our fans, players and partners for this disappointing turn of events. We don't know what's going to happen with Sky Esports moving forward. One person that certainly wasn't shy about giving their opinion, as reported on Dust2.India, right, was Sponge. One of the wildest headlines I've seen in 25. Sponge on Sky Esports cancelling Souvenir. You are a fucking dog. He's come out swinging, said this on HLTV, confirmed. Sponge was particularly critical of the tournament organiser, accusing them of mishandling the rules and then blaming Valve. He expressed frustration over the impact of such cancellations, stating that announcing an event only to cancel it a couple of months later wastes valuable calendar space for teams. By the way, just before I read the full quote, he's absolutely right. The problem that we've got is, in a packed calendar where, as we've seen, Star Series couldn't even be rescheduled because there wasn't a free weekend. And we know that teams are going to have to pick and choose what events they go to. We're already in the thick of it, by the way. We've already got Blast, Bounty, Katowice, Interclusion Poker. These things are running so close together. We don't know what teams are going to be where, who's going to decline invites, who's going to go. We also, as I've said, there's likely a power play being made by all of the ESL-friendly orgs that all have their weird interwoven ties, like BetGG owning Na'Vi, co-owning Na'Vi. We don't even know what's going on there. And then BetGG also sponsors Vitality, and both of them all love ESL. And let's see how 2025 pans out. A lot of political fuckery afoot. But the bottom line is, if you then occupy a date and people go, well, we can't have that one, Sky Esports is having that one, and then they move around, and then Sky Esports turns around and says, oh, we can't do it, and that weekend is suddenly freed up, well, someone has missed an opportunity to run a tournament there in the absence of you. So yes, it's a fuck up, and you can't put this thing on Valve. As I read the rules in the last video, Valve explicitly said this is how it's going to be. There is not going to be any exemptions except in the most extreme of circumstances, by which I think they mean like natural disasters and stuff like that. You not getting your shit together, that's not going to be it. That's not going to be good enough. We're entering a new professionalized era where only the best tournaments are going to get the Valve stamp of approval. This was very similar, by the way, to what Activision Blizzard did with the WCS over in StarCraft. They said if you want to get those world ranking points officially from us, your event has to pass the mustard. It has to be a good event, competently run, without any controversies, run by ethical companies. Otherwise, you don't get those points, and then you won't have the best players, and you won't get the viewership, and you won't get the sponsors. And this is how it has to work. It's the only way these tournaments are going to actually run good events, particularly the ones that are inexperienced and haven't been around the block. Now, let's just scroll down to the full quote. There's two quotes, but this is the first one. If you are scheduling events in advance and then cancelling within a couple of months of the event being announced, you're a fucking dog. That's what I call people on Faceit, and that's what I'm going to call the TOs that do this. And then just in all caps, Sponge. I love it. Love the energy from Chad. Like, it's what... Just the idea of him running around calling people fucking dogs on Face It is fucking hilarious as well. Like, dog is such a fucking unique insult that you generally only get that in, I want to say, Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia and Australia seem to be the big play. Oh, and some countries in the Middle East as well. And then he said, when talking about the impact of events on the Tier 2 scenes, Valve is the daddy who is not going to come in with the belt. They are going to be disappointed and you won't be getting your candies for Christmas. And this is true. Valve said, we will issue penalties if you don't get your shit together. They didn't state what those penalties were going to be. But Valve are now involved in esports, whether you like it or not. They are paying. This is the most involved in esports, in the esports circuit, they have ever been. And they are certainly watching and they are seeing who complies with the rules. And that's going to affect all sorts of things in future. Maybe getting the license of the game, maybe getting a major if you ever pitch for one, etc., etc. They are watching, they are observing, and they are making notes. That's what Valve do. They aren't just going to be like a Riot Games and be really, issue punitive penalties and get up all in your face and say horrible things about you and blah, blah, blah. Also, I do have to say, every time I see a photo of Chad with his glorious head of hair now, it really does make me want to get the transplant. I'm just saying. But anyway, I agree. TOs that do this are fucking dogs. I couldn't have said it better myself, Chad. Glad you did. All of which is to say, there's going to be more of this. There's going to be more of this. There's going to be more fallout as we try and professionalize the circuit, and Valve are more and more involved, and Valve are making more and more demands. It's just the nature of the beast. But this is all a good thing. These are the types of teething problems a scene has to have if it wants to get to a better place. We can't just have tournament operators running tournaments willy-nilly whenever they want, announcing events, inviting who they want, while still wanting the benefit of Valve support and Valve recognition. It's got to be a partnership. We got to get these things in line and have a professional standard for a professional circuit. No more partner era cowboy bullshit. It's got to look like a real fucking sport, a real circuit. And so far, so good. I like the fact Valve are holding people accountable and the community isn't taking any shit from tournament operators that are playing fast and loose and just thinking, yeah, Valve don't really care about the rules. Valve don't really pay any attention. They do.